What's the juiciest secret you know? Story 1. I used to volunteer for a medical charity, and we had this incredibly kind doctor on our team. He was calm no matter what happened. One time, a patient threw something at him, and he ended up lying in a puddle of urine. He just laughed it off and helped clean up, like it was no big deal. But one day changed how I saw him. A woman came in with a stab wound. Her family had lied about how it happened. The doctor took one look at the wound and said, in the coldest voice I've ever heard, "Don't lie." It wasn't loud, but it sent chills down my spine. One of the family members even pulled a knife on him. He snatched it mid-swing without flinching. After patching her up, he called the police and testified, despite threats. He later offered the woman a job to help her escape that life. I've seen his body, covered in scars, and he has a Latin tattoo that translates to faithful in hardship. He's the quietest, kindest person I've ever met, but I wouldn't want to be on his bad side. Story 2. 2 weeks before my daughter's wedding, I found out my husband had been cheating on me for over 5 years. He had a heart attack while traveling, and the person who saved his life? His mistress. Afterward, he claimed he was impotent and couldn't take meds for it. Said it was his heart condition. I believed him. We'd been married over 20 years. Turns out he'd just been lying. When I confronted him, he tried to deny it, but eventually admitted everything. We agreed to stay together until after the holidays for the kids. Then, 2 months later, he had a massive stroke. Now I care for a man who cheated on me. He can't speak properly, cries a lot, and begs me not to tell our kids. Part of me wants to scream, but the other part just feels numb. I'm doing what I think is right, even though it hurts. It's not the life I imagined, but I guess this is what in sickness and in health really means. Story 3. Back in high school, my friends and I went camping at a spot we visited every year. This time, the girls joined us, which made things more exciting. One day, they stayed back, so we went tubing down the creek. A storm was brewing when a man on the bank asked if we'd seen his missing daughter and her friend. We hadn't, but promised to keep an eye out. A few minutes later, we heard laughter and what sounded like muffled screams across the water. We paddled over to check it out, and what we found still haunts me. 2 drunk men were assaulting the missing girls while another filmed. We charged in. I used my martial arts training while my friend tackled one of them. We got the camera and took the girls back to their dad. A few days later, 2 of those guys were found dead, beaten, and hanged. No one said anything, but we all had a feeling who did it. The girls never knew the whole story. Maybe it's better that way. Story 4. I used to work in Nigeria during a supposedly massive fertilizer project. Politicians were bribing each other left and right. The vice president and finance minister were drunk with power, literally. Meetings were held in expensive London apartments. Companies were promised natural gas allocations, but only if they paid bribes. Everyone did. Around election time, things got violent. Over 2,000 people died, and many were executed by being burned alive with tires. The idea was to create fertilizer for Nigeria and supply almost a quarter of Africa. But in the end, it became a front for dirty politics and bloodshed. What shocked me most is how normalized corruption was. Government officials were openly using fake positions and dirty money to gain and hold power. People died for a project that never even got off the ground. That's the part no one talks about. Story 5. My grandfather once killed a man. He worked in the U.S. during the 60s and 70s as a legal agricultural laborer. After finishing a season, he and a close friend crossed back into Mexico. On a quiet dirt path, his friend suddenly pulled a knife and tried to stab him. My grandpa fought back and ended up killing the man in self-defense. He buried the body in a remote area and never told my grandmother. But the guilt haunted him. Nightmares, visions, he said they never stopped. Years later, he returned to the site, found the remains, and gave the man a proper burial. After that, the nightmares stopped. He told this story to only 2 people, my mom and me. He passed away a few years back, and to this day, my grandmother doesn't know. I think he carried that weight his whole life, even though he had no choice. Story 6. Here's something I rarely talk about. A lot of Republican politicians, and even Joe Biden's son, have taken money from the Moonies, a cult-like church with ties to North Korea. My dad was part of it. He lived in a van for 7 years, gave up his paycheck, and survived on basically nothing. The American branch of the church was run by Reverend Moon's daughter-in-law. She cheated on her husband with a band member, had a secret baby, and the birth certificate leaked. Her ex-husband got prosecuted for shady business stuff involving millions in mystery money. Meanwhile, both parties have accepted donations from this group. The church has been convicted in Japan for exploiting widows. They require members to give 10% of their income and used to make them live in vans while the leadership lived in luxury. It's wild that this isn't a bigger story. But when you've got money and political connections, I guess people just look the other way. Story 7. My friend Jess has been dating the same guy for almost 5 years. He's useless. Mooches off his parents, treats her like garbage, and constantly puts her down. She's gained some weight recently, and he's become crueler. He goes to parties without her, eats out with his family and leaves her home, and lets his druggy friends crash on her couch. But Jess? She still thinks he's amazing. The worst part? Early in their relationship, our mutual friend Becky told me she hooked up with him at a party. He let her kiss him, and more. Becky told me in confidence, so I never said anything. Jess always says, I trust him with my life. He'd never cheat on me. And every time it makes me sick. I've tried to hint that he's not a good guy, but she brushes it off. She deserves so much better. I just don't know if telling her would help or completely destroy her. Story 8. I've worked in a few restaurants that were clearly funded by mob money. Some were subtle about it, others not so much. I once heard a manager joke, "Oops, the foie gras spoiled. Time to use the Coke money." But the scariest place? A Vietnamese restaurant across from a travel agency in our town's Little Saigon. One night, around 2 a.m., I drove past and saw 2 buses filled with young Southeast Asian women parked outside. Not a single one had a jacket or purse. No phones. No talking. Just sitting in silence on a freezing night. Something felt deeply wrong. I called the Polaris Project to report it. I don't know what happened after that. I changed jobs and haven't been back since. But honestly, I still think about it. I hope something was done. You see stuff like that once, and it never leaves you. Story 9. About 25 years ago, my friends Rob and Ariel started dating. One night, Rob got drunk and confessed something disturbing. Ariel had a thing for bestiality and had done stuff with his family's dogs. It was horrifying. They both pretended the conversation never happened, so I did the same. A few years later, they moved in together and adopted more huskies. Eventually, they got married. 10 years later, they split up. Rob passed away not long after. Ariel moved away with the dogs and we lost touch. The last I heard, she remarried to a guy who runs an animal shelter. I try not to think about what might be going on there. It's one of those secrets I wish I never knew. Story 10. Years ago, I went to a strip club with my girlfriend and a married buddy. The headliner was Brie Olson, yes, the famous adult actress. After her show, she offered private lap dances for $50. My friend went for it. My girlfriend laughed and said, "Bet you $20 he ends up doing more than just a dance." I took the bet. A few minutes later, he came back and casually said, "So, I just hooked up with Brie Olson." I was stunned. He told me the details, way too many details. We agreed to keep it secret. When my girlfriend came back from the bathroom, I smugly told her I'd won the bet. She paid up, and we both got lucky that night. But now, with all the news about Charlie Sheen and his history with Brie, I kinda want to tell my buddy to get tested. He probably has no clue, and he's still married. Story 11. One night, a close friend got drunk and confessed to something horrifying. He admitted that 3 years earlier, he had taken advantage of a girl, someone we both knew, while she was passed out at a party. She was the sister of one of our mutual friends. At the time, she reported it and had a rape kit done, but there was no DNA match. A month later, we found out she was pregnant. She chose to keep the baby and we all supported her, except for the guy who got her pregnant. After his confession, I was furious. I knocked him out cold. Then I called another friend to help me figure out what to do. While the guy was unconscious, I swabbed his mouth with a Q-tip and paid for a private paternity test. A few weeks later, the results came back. He was the father. We turned everything over to the police. He's in prison now, and from what I've heard, he's not having an easy time. Justice was served, but not in the way you'd expect. Story 12. When I was 15, my parents separated. My dad moved out and stopped helping financially. My mom didn't have a job, so things got tough fast. To help out, I secretly started working for a friend's dad under the table. Every day after school, I worked from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., then came home exhausted. My mom thought I was just out breaking curfew and would yell at me for being lazy. My sisters joined in too, not realizing I was the one paying the bills. I'd grab the mail every day to keep them from seeing the overdue notices. They thought my dad was still covering everything. I nearly failed school because I was so tired all the time, but I never told them the truth. Even now, years later, they still don't know. I kept the lights on, the fridge full, and the rent paid, but they saw me as the problem. I've never gotten credit, but honestly, I didn't do it for praise. I did it because someone had to. Story 13. My ex and I were together for over 10 years and had a son. We eventually broke up, and she started dating a guy who, frankly, was a mess. Then she told me she was pregnant with his child. I was crushed. I had secretly hoped we'd get back together. Then she called me one night, crying. The guy had hit her and left her stranded while pregnant. I picked her up and brought her home. Slowly, we started reconnecting. My son was thrilled to have his mom around again. Eventually, we got back together, but we didn't tell anyone. Not even my parents. When the baby was born, my parents assumed he was mine. He looked like me, so no one questioned it. I wasn't sure I could love someone else's child, but when I saw my son holding his little brother, everything changed. I love that baby like my own, and our family feels whole again. My parents still don't know the truth, and honestly, I don't think I'll ever tell them. Story 14. There's an actor, semi-famous, regular roles on TV. He recently did an interview talking about how excited he was to have his first child. But here's the thing, I know he already has a daughter. I used to date her. She's never hidden who her dad is, and she even shares his last name. So it really stung to see that interview where he pretended she doesn't exist. She's always spoken highly of him, even though they don't have a super close relationship. I guess he's not famous enough for people to dig into his past, but it still feels awful. Imagine reading that your dad doesn't acknowledge you publicly. I've never told anyone this before, and I don't plan to. It's not my story to tell. But every time I see him on TV now, I can't help but think about how easy it is for some people to rewrite their lives like that, leaving real people behind. Story 15. My best friend and I had always been close. Like, we knew everything about each other close. A few weeks before she had brain surgery to remove a tumor, she came back to our hometown and we ended up spending the night together. It was amazing. If she hadn't moved away, I think we could have been something real. But after her surgery, she lost her memory. She also developed a condition that made speech nearly impossible. Before the operation, she had told me, "If I forget everything, tell my boyfriend to move on." But he didn't. He still posts emotional messages on her social media like she's coming back. Her parents, very strict and conservative, never liked me because I'm Native American. They used to make her lie just to hang out with me. Now, she lives 20 minutes away, but doesn't even remember who I am. I haven't visited. I don't know how to talk to someone who once meant everything to me, when I'm now just a stranger to her. Story 16. After my divorce, I was going through my ex-husband's old stuff and found some military field journals. I flipped through one and found something I wish I hadn't. A letter he had written to a cousin, describing disturbing fantasies. They'd always been close, texting late into the night, but I never thought there was more to it. The letter made it clear he had feelings for her, and maybe even acted on them. I also know he cheated on his new wife and even tried to kiss me while she was pregnant. I never told anyone. I still have that letter, and honestly, if I wanted to ruin his life, I probably could. But part of me hopes he's changed. The other part? Still disgusted by what I read. Story 17. My friend used to run an escort business. He eventually fell for one of the women who worked for him. She quit, they started dating, got married, and just had a baby. Only a few people know her past, including me and his brother. Speaking of his brother, here's something wild. Years ago, my friend played a prank on him. He threw firecrackers over the shower curtain and snapped a photo with a disposable camera. Months later, when he developed the film, he realized he'd caught his brother mid-moment. Let's just say it wasn't PG. Panicking, he hid the photo in an envelope and taped it under his TV stand. Years later, his room was cleaned, and the envelope was gone. No maid. The only explanation: his mom found it. She never said a word. He eventually told his dad, who thought it was hilarious. But to this day, my friend cringes just thinking about it. Story 18. One of my family members is involved in politics, so I've heard some wild behind-the-scenes stuff. For example, federal prosecutors, the people who are supposed to keep politicians honest, are often more corrupt themselves. They build careers by going after public officials, even if the evidence is weak. And lobbyists, they basically buy loyalty. If a candidate doesn't support their agenda, they'll fund the opposition instead. It's not even subtle. I also learned that Obama, unlike most presidents, didn't have a close inner circle. He was isolated, which made his job way harder. And when it comes to foreign policy disasters like Iraq's weapons of mass destruction or the Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam, those often happen because people in the middle twist the truth for money or power. It's terrifying how much of what we think is real is actually manipulated. Story 19. I grew up in a small tropical island nation. Our neighbor was a wealthy British man who made his fortune during World War II. He was old, frail, and kind of grumpy. He only ever called me boy. One day, my mom sent me over with soup, and I ended up looking around his cluttered home. On a table, I saw a black and white photo of him sitting closely with a woman who looked oddly familiar. I asked who she was, and he casually said, "That's Liz." Then it hit me, her face was on our currency. It was Queen Elizabeth. I noticed a folder with more photos of the two of them, laughing, chatting, clearly close. He didn't say more, and I didn't ask. He passed away years ago, and I've never told anyone. But I'm almost certain he had a relationship with the Queen. Still blows my mind. Story 20. A while back, I was seeing an NFL player. We weren't officially a couple, but we went on dates, hung out, and acted like one. He told me he wanted to keep things private because of his schedule and fame. I bought it. Then one night, I noticed a text from his supposed ex-girlfriend. I didn't read it, but something felt off. A few weeks later, we broke up. Not long after that, I found out he'd gotten married. To that ex, turns out I was the side chick the whole time and had no idea. Now he's going through some career and personal issues, and while I don't wish him harm, I can't help but feel like karma's doing its thing. I could expose everything and ruin his image, but honestly, I've moved on. Still, every time I see him praised on TV, I remember the truth. Story 21. I used to work at a family-owned grocery store. The owners acted friendly, but behind the scenes, they were greedy and awful to employees. There was this one cop who'd come in right before closing. He was polite, so I didn't mind staying late to make his sandwich. One night, instead of ordering, he asked me to walk with him down an empty aisle. He told me he'd caught one of the store's married owners in a car under a bridge, with a young cashier from another location. The owner tried to bribe him, not with money, but with steaks and lobsters. The cop turned him down. He asked me if I thought he should tell the man's wife. Or worse, tell the cashier's fiancée, who was known to be aggressive. I had no idea what to say. He left without ordering anything, and I never saw him again. Later, I passed the story to a coworker to see if he'd do something with it. I don't know if he did, but part of me hopes he used that secret to finally get the raise he deserved. Story 22. There's a girl in my hometown who lives with her best friend. A guy who's basically a rock star. Long blonde hair, good-looking, plays drums in a few popular bands. She's overweight, which matters here because of what she confided in a few close friends. Turns out, they've been secretly hooking up for years. She's in love with him, but he refuses to date her publicly because of her size. He even told her the exact weight she'd have to reach before he'd consider being with her for real. She got pregnant during this secret relationship and was too scared to tell him. Instead of terminating, she carried the baby to term in total silence. Because of her size, no one suspected a thing. She arranged for a couple to adopt the baby and handled everything quietly. To this day, almost no one knows she ever had a child. I've kept her secret because she trusted me. But the whole situation still breaks my heart. Story 23. I'm really good at online research. Not in a creepy way, mostly just helping friends vet people they're dating. One time, a friend asked me to look into a guy she liked. Within an hour, I found his Facebook, LinkedIn, Spotify, and eventually his Reddit account. That's where things got personal. He had shared an emotional post about losing his older brother as a kid. He said he'd never told anyone in real life. I didn't tell my friend about it, but it stuck with me. Over time, I got to know him too. We became friends, and one night while we were drinking, he opened up and told me about his brother. He said I was the first person he ever told. I nodded and said the right things, but deep down I felt horrible. I already knew. I wanted to confess, but it would have ruined everything. That moment made me realize how serious online privacy is. Since then, I've stopped digging into people's lives, unless it's for safety reasons. Lesson learned. Story 24. My cousin's girlfriend's best friend had a terrifying experience. She was out clubbing with friends and met a guy who tried really hard to take her home. She said no, wanting to stick with her group. The next morning, she woke up with a rash on her face. She figured it was from kissing, but it got worse, so she saw a doctor. After examining her, the doctor locked the door and asked for every detail about her last 48 hours. Then he called the police. The rash was caused by a bacteria that only grows on decomposing bodies. Turns out, the man she kissed was caught later, and authorities found 2 victims in his home. He had done unspeakable things and was planning to make her next. If she had gone home with him that night, she might not be here. I still get chills thinking about it. That one decision, staying with her friends, saved her life. Story 25. One of my relatives ran for governor in a province in the Philippines. It was one of the most dangerous elections ever. Gangs, bombings, and vote buying were part of the process. She tried to run a clean campaign, but it was nearly impossible. While visiting a rural village, she found a 12-year-old girl being kept in a cage and used in horrific ways. She confronted the father, but nothing changed. Later, she explained how votes are bought by handing out envelopes of cash. Everyone does it. Even she joked about filming the corruption, but admitted that only ruthless people could actually win there. We visited the governor's mansion once. It looked like a palace, always lit, even at 2 a.m. with music playing. The governor's family had ties to drug cartels and ran the power company too. I've heard even darker stories, but I can't share them. They're too specific and dangerous. What I can say is, corruption there is so deep, it feels like there's no way out. It made me realize how lucky we are, even with our problems. Story 26. When I came out to my dad, I was terrified. He's ex-military, super traditional. But to my surprise, he was fully supportive. Then he told me something I never saw coming. I had a brother and sister I never knew about. He had started another family after divorcing my mom. But my mom made him promise never to tell me. She said if he did, he'd never see me again. So he kept the secret. I was shocked. I grew up an only child, always wishing I had siblings. My mom was emotionally distant, and I spent most of my childhood alone. Turns out I had exactly what I wanted all along, and she kept it from me. I've since met them and we clicked instantly. My mom still has no idea I know. I'm getting married soon, and I plan to invite them to the wedding. I want to see the look on her face when the truth comes out. It's not about revenge. It's about finally having the family I was denied. Story 27. A coworker of mine was killed, and I still think about it to this day. He was a single dad after his wife left him. He eventually got mixed up with the wrong people, drugs, partying. One night, he got into an argument at a party and left. But someone followed him and ran his car off the road. He died in the crash. Several witnesses told the police what happened, but nothing came of it. The guy who caused it? Still free. I don't know if he had connections or if the cops just didn't care. Feels like the case was buried. Thankfully, his ex-wife came back to raise their kids, and they seem to be doing okay now. But it's heartbreaking. He was a good guy who made some bad choices. He didn't deserve to die that way, and he definitely didn't deserve to be forgotten. Story 28. There's a girl in my friend group who has no idea everyone secretly dislikes her. They call her a liar behind her back, but I've never seen her lie. They think she faked having cancer, even though she has a scar from surgery and hospital photos. They say she lied about being a college professor because they couldn't find her name online. Turns out they searched the wrong school. She missed a wedding due to emergency surgery, and they claim she made it up because she hadn't bought her bridesmaid dress. For her birthday, her parents bought everyone tickets to a football game in New York. No one showed up. She went alone. It was heartbreaking. I didn't go because of health reasons, but I still apologized. She's a wonderful person, and it hurts to see her treated this way. I don't know whether to tell her the truth or protect her from the heartbreak. But honestly, this group acts like we're in high school, not full-grown adults. Story 29. A few years ago, some local guys known for violence said they were going to attack my friend at a party. These weren't empty threats, they had a real reputation. I warned my friend, and he just shrugged it off, saying, "John will be there." Everyone knew John. He was huge, friendly, and peaceful, but also mysterious. When the guys showed up at the party, things got tense. Just as they were about to start something, John stepped in. He whispered something to them, and their whole vibe changed. They followed him outside, pale and silent. I watched from a distance. 2 black SUVs pulled up, and the guys were shoved inside. 2 days later, they were found in the hospital. Every bone in their bodies broken. Turns out, John's family is connected to serious people. No one said a word about it. But after that night, no one ever messed with my friend again. Story 30. During my freshman year of college, I played a harmless prank on my roommate Brad. On April Fool's Day, I dropped Tic Tacs through the peephole of his door and left a note. "Hope this doesn't tick you off." He laughed and said he'd get me back next year. I forgot all about it. At the end of the semester, I left my backpack in his room and asked him to hold onto it over the summer. When the new semester started, he gave it back and I used it every day. Then the whispers started. Friends kept teasing, "Just wait for April Fools." Eventually, one of them cracked and told me, over the summer, Brad had done something disgusting to the backpack. I checked and saw faint stains inside and out. I was horrified. I had been carrying that thing around for months. The worst part? Everyone knew. They watched me walk around campus with it and said nothing. Brad doesn't know I found out, but I'm planning payback. I just haven't decided how gross I want to go yet. Story 31. 2 of my best friends from college had a baby together and no one knows. They managed to keep the entire pregnancy a secret. She didn't show much and wore oversized shirts the whole time. Right before winter break, they told their parents they were going away for the holidays. In reality, they stayed at our off-campus house and waited for the baby to arrive. She went into labor, delivered a healthy baby boy, and they signed the adoption papers immediately. She didn't even hold him. He saw the baby once. Then they both returned to campus like nothing had happened. None of us suspected a thing. Years later, he told me everything over lunch. Only one other friend knew. He had accidentally walked in while they were heading to the hospital. Even now, their families are completely unaware. I think about it sometimes, wondering if the child will ever come looking for them. But for now, it remains one of the best-kept secrets I've ever been trusted with. Story 32. I used to be best friends with someone I've known since we were 9. Her family basically raised me during a rough time in my life. We're no longer close, but there's something I've kept for years. One night in college, her mom got drunk and told me that my friend's dad, the man she adored, wasn't her biological father. Her mom had gotten pregnant during a brief separation and passed the baby off as her husband's. Only a few people know, including her younger sister. My friend has no clue. The worst part? Her dad passed away recently, and she's been devastated. She speaks about him with so much love, not knowing the truth. I've never told anyone, and now that we're not speaking, I definitely won't. But it weighs heavy on me. She deserves to know, but it's not my place, especially now. I just hope someday, if the truth ever comes out, she hears it from the right person. Story 33. I used to work as a case manager for people on house arrest. Some were already convicted, others were pretrial but considered flight risks. Part of my job was verifying their employment. One guy stands out. He had been arrested for child abuse while working for a major religious organization. He lost that job but got approved as an independent contractor. Everything checked out, so he was allowed to leave home for work. A few weeks after I left the job, I returned to the office for unrelated business. That's when I saw him walk in to pick up a check. We locked eyes. He smiled nervously, then made a shoot gesture with his finger to his lips, like I was supposed to keep quiet. It made my skin crawl. I didn't say anything, but I can still see his face. That moment sticks with me, not just because of what he did, but because he thought a simple nod and a gesture could erase it all. I hope justice finally caught up with him. Story 34. Back in college, I was juggling two relationships, one local, one long distance. The local girl became emotionally intense and manipulative, while the long-distance one was sweet and supportive. We met online and talked every day. I developed real feelings for her, but I was living a lie. I'd mute notifications when I was with one to message the other. I tried breaking up with the local girl, but she'd cry, threaten self-harm, and once even showed me the cuts. I felt trapped, so I ghosted the long-distance girl. Slowly, painfully. I made excuses, acted distant, and eventually caused a blow-up so she'd walk away. I still feel awful about it. The local relationship didn't last much longer. I finally ended it and got out. I never told either of them about the other. Now I'm single, and the long-distance girl has moved on. I still think about her. If we ever cross paths again, I'll owe her the truth and an apology. But I know I've probably lost that chance forever. Story 35. There's a guy in our extended social circle who used to be married to the daughter of family friends. Their marriage was rocky, and eventually, she ended up in rehab for prescription drug use. The real reason: her husband was secretly gay. Their intimate life was basically non-existent unless it was from behind, and even then only with a ring to help him stay aroused. They somehow had a child, but things eventually fell apart. The worst part? He's from a powerful family and works as an attorney for them, so he's terrified of coming out. Apparently, they'd go to extreme lengths to keep things quiet. He also racked up over $500,000 in gambling debt, which his ex's father had to pay off. My mom told me all of this, including the awkward moment she had to explain what a certain bedroom accessory was. That image still haunts me. The whole situation felt like a soap opera in real life, and no one outside the family knows the full story. Story 36. My cousin Tim has struggled with serious mental health issues his whole life. When we were kids, I thought he was just quirky. But now I realize it went much deeper. He used to suck his thumb until his teens, flap his arms in strange ways, and once even choked his brother hard enough to damage his throat. He was still eating baby food at age 7. His parents were in denial. Even when extended family, some of whom worked in education and healthcare, tried to help, they shut everyone out. Years later, while helping them move, my mom found medical documents referencing autism, schizophrenia, and other conditions. Finally made sense. Tim is more stable now, but still clearly struggles. I've pieced together a lot just from conversations with him. He's not dangerous, just misunderstood. Sad, really. He could have had more support if his parents had been open about what was going on. Instead, they kept everything secret, even from people who genuinely wanted to help. Story 37. Before my parents got married, my mom was dating my dad. One of his friends, who was also dating my mom's best friend, made a move on her. He was cocky, acted like she'd been waiting for him. My mom turned him down multiple times. Eventually, he left her friend and married someone else. They've got kids now. My mom never told her best friend or my dad. She only told me years later when I was a teen. That would have been the end of it, except one day at a barbecue, I saw that same guy greet my mom with a kiss on the lips. It was quick, but very real. My parents rarely even kiss in front of me, so it was jarring. I asked my mom about it later. She said she was caught off guard and thought it was rude. I believe she never cheated, but I still don't know why she told me the story in the first place. Maybe she needed someone to know. My dad still talks about this guy like they were great friends. He has no idea. Story 38. My family is full of secrets, especially on my mom's side. But recently, I uncovered one from my dad's side. My great-grandfather had a mistress and a second family, something we've all known for years. His children from that affair agreed to keep it hidden from their own kids. But one day, my aunt met a guy with our rare last name at a horse show and joked, "Maybe we're related." When he asked his mom, she confirmed it. He was one of the secret grandchildren. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, I saw someone with our last name commenting on a public Facebook post. I clicked on her profile and saw pictures of her daughter. Something about her face looked familiar, like she could be part of our family. Turns out, her dad is married into our family line. I haven't told anyone yet, but I'm tempted to reach out. Part of me wants to connect with them. The other part is scared of what I might find out. Story 39. My dad isn't actually my dad, my uncle is. I found out at a family barbecue of all places. My uncle got tipsy and started sharing stories nobody asked for. Out of nowhere, he drops, "You know, I always thought of you as more than a nephew." I thought he was being weird. But later that night, he pulled me aside and said, "Ask your mom about that summer in '95. I did. She went pale. Turns out, while she and my dad were on a break, she had a thing with his brother. She got pregnant. My dad stepped up thinking I was his. My uncle always knew the truth. To this day, my dad has no idea. He raised me with so much love, he's my hero. But now, every time I look at him, I'm reminded that he's living a lie. I haven't told anyone, and I don't think I ever will. Story 40. I found my sister listed on a missing persons website, and no one else in my family knows. I was adopted when I was 5. My parents were great, but they never told me much about my past. One day, I decided to take a DNA test just for fun. What I got back was far from fun. A match popped up. Someone flagged as missing since the early 2000s. I looked deeper and realized she was my sister. We were taken from our birth parents during a messy custody battle. I got adopted out. She didn't. After weeks of searching, I found her. She was alive but barely getting by. Living in a shelter, working odd jobs, completely alone. I reached out and we met. She cried when I told her who I was. She'd spent years thinking I was dead. My adoptive parents have no idea I found her. And my birth family? Still a mystery. But now, I have a sister again. And no one knows. Story 41. My wedding was ruined by my future mother-in-law. She hated me from day one. Said I was too independent, too opinionated, and probably not good enough for her son. I always smiled through it, thinking we'd eventually get along. But a week before our wedding, she faked a heart condition. She collapsed during the rehearsal dinner and claimed it was stress from losing her son. He rushed her to the hospital. I was left standing alone in front of 60 people. The next morning, she was totally fine. That night, my fiancé called me and said, "Maybe we should postpone the wedding, just until things settle." I realized in that moment, he was never going to choose me over her. So I packed up my dress, canceled everything, and walked away. To this day, his family thinks I bailed without warning. But I know the truth. She didn't just lose a son. She lost a daughter-in-law. Story 42. I once gave a ride to someone who was running for her life, and no one ever found out. I drive for a rideshare app. One night around 3 a.m., I picked up a woman who looked terrified. She barely spoke, just gave me an address and stared out the window. A few minutes in, she whispered, "Don't stop the car, no matter what." I checked my mirror, there was a van following us. Same turn every time. She curled up in the seat, shaking. "He's behind us," she said. "Please." I sped up, took random back roads, and finally lost the van. When we pulled up to the destination, I realized it was a women's shelter. She looked at me and said, "You saved my life," then ran inside. I never got her name, never saw her again. But I know what I saw, and I know someone out there was hunting her. And if I had stopped that car, she might not be alive today. Story 43. My brother texted me goodbye, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. He had always struggled with depression, but he was good at hiding it. Always the one cracking jokes, checking in on everyone. One night at 2:47 a.m., he texted me, "I'm proud of you. Keep going." Half asleep, I replied, "Love you too. Talk tomorrow." That was the last message I ever sent him. The next morning, he was gone. He'd taken his own life. My family doesn't know about that final text. I've never told them. Carry it alone. I keep wondering, if I had called him right then, would things be different? Could I have changed his mind? I've replayed it 1,000 times. Now, I speak at schools and events, telling people to check in on their loved ones, even if they seem fine. Because sometimes the final goodbye doesn't look like a goodbye at all. It looks like a text. At 2:47 a.m. Story 44. My grandmother lived a double life for nearly 40 years, and no one found out until after she passed. When we were cleaning out her house, we found a locked drawer in her desk. Inside were love letters from another man. They dated back to the 1970s. He called her my forever and mentioned vacations, secret apartments, even a shared bank account. We were shocked. She'd been married to my grandfather for over 50 years. We did some digging. Turns out she had a second home 2 towns over. The utilities were in her maiden name. We even found photos of her with this man, smiling like she was truly in love. She managed to split her life between 2 families without anyone suspecting a thing. My grandfather never knew. He passed thinking she was the love of his life. Now the family is divided. Half of us feel betrayed, the other half impressed. I still don't know how to feel, but she pulled it off. For 4 decades. Story 45. My high school English teacher disappeared in the middle of the school year. No warning, no goodbye. The official story was that she moved for personal reasons. But I know the real reason because she told me. A week before she vanished, I was helping her clean up after class. Out of nowhere, she asked if I believed in second chances. I said yes. She nodded and said, "Good. I'm about to take mine." Then she told me she wasn't who we thought she was. She changed her name years ago after being involved in a major fraud case. She wasn't convicted, but she fled her old life, started fresh, and found peace as a teacher. But someone from her past had found her. She showed me a letter. No return address. Just the words, "You can't hide forever." I never saw her again. The school replaced her within a week. No one ever talked about it. But I still wonder who sent that letter, and whether she ever got that second chance. Story 46. My mom lost her wedding ring, except she didn't really lose it. When I was 14, I walked into the kitchen late one night and saw her holding the ring over the sink. She looked up and froze. I asked what she was doing. She said, "Just cleaning." But the next morning, she told the entire family she lost it while gardening. Years later, she confessed the truth to me after a few glasses of wine. She had discovered my dad was having an emotional affair with a coworker. Nothing physical, just daily texts, lunch dates, and secret calls. She confronted him, and he denied it. So she took off her ring and threw it down the garbage disposal. She said, "If he wasn't going to honor the vows, neither was I. They're still together. They act like nothing ever happened." But every time I see her fake smile at family dinners, I remember that night, and the sound of metal hitting the drain. Story 47. My best friend raised a child for 2 years. That wasn't his. He was over the moon when his girlfriend told him she was pregnant. He bought books, painted the nursery, cried at the birth. He loved that baby more than anything. But I always had doubts. The timeline didn't add up. She had cheated before. I begged him to get a paternity test. He refused until one day the baby needed a blood transfusion. It was a different blood type. He finally got the test. Not his. He was destroyed. He left her, but not the baby. He kept visiting, bringing gifts, reading bedtime stories. Then she cut him off. Said, "You're not the dad, so you're not needed." He broke. I've never seen someone fall apart like that. To this day, he keeps a photo of the child in his wallet. And she has no idea that somewhere out there, the man she called Dad still loves her like his own. Story 48. When I was 17, I discovered a hidden door in my childhood home's basement. I was moving boxes when I noticed a panel in the wall that didn't match. Pushed it and it opened. Inside was a small room. Old, dusty, and cold. There was a mattress, a lockbox, and dozens of Polaroids. The photos were of people, strangers, sitting in the room. Some looked scared, others confused. I brought one to my dad. He turned white, sat down and said, "Never go in there again." That was it. A week later, the entire basement was gutted. Panel sealed. Room gone. Years later, I asked again. He said it was part of a mistake from before I was born. I don't know what happened in that room. I don't know who those people were. But I know my dad isn't who I thought he was. And that secret is still buried under our house. Story 49. The priest at my childhood church has a daughter no one knows about. He always preached about purity, sin, and loyalty, especially loyalty. But when I was 16, I worked at a small diner after school. One day, I saw him come in with a woman who wasn't his wife, and a little girl who looked exactly like him. They sat in a corner booth. He held the child's hand like he'd done it 1,000 times. When I brought their drinks, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "This is my niece, family from out of state." He left a $100 tip. Years later, I ran into that little girl, now a teenager. She called him Dad. No hesitation. He still preaches every Sunday. His wife sits in the front row. And that other family? Still living just outside town. No one knows. Except me. Story 50. My cousin won the lottery and never told her husband. She scratched the ticket in her car before picking up groceries. $2.3 million. She cried for an hour in the parking lot. Then she made a plan. She opened a separate bank account and claimed the prize as a single filer. Told no one, not even me, until years later after a few too many drinks. She used the money to pay off their mortgage, secretly fund her son's private school tuition, and stash the rest in investments. Her husband still believes they're drowning in debt. Every time he says, "We can't afford that," she just nods. She says she's saving it for the day she decides to leave. And from the way she talks about him, that day's coming soon. Story 51. My best friend's wedding never actually happened. She had broken off the engagement 2 weeks before the date, but instead of canceling everything, she faked it. She told her guests she was eloping instead. Sent out thank you cards with photoshopped pictures from a fake ceremony in Italy. She even wore a dress in front of a green screen and hired someone on Fiverr to edit the backgrounds. Why? Because she didn't want to return the wedding gifts. She kept the blender, the cash, the air fryer, everything. Most people still think she's married and travels a lot. The truth? She lives in a studio apartment with a cat named Divorce. And she says it's the happiest she's ever been. Story 52. My high school math teacher never graduated college. She was brilliant. Everyone loved her. But one day I was helping organize old files for the school office, and I found her resume. Her alma mater? A university that didn't exist. I looked it up. Nothing. No records. Not even a website. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Until I asked her about it casually. Her face dropped. She asked me to stay after class. She admitted the truth. She never finished her degree. She forged the papers to get her first teaching job and kept the lie going for over 12 years. She said she did it because she was desperate, and she really believed she was good enough to teach. And honestly, she was. I never told anyone. But every time I see a Teacher of the Year plaque with her name on it, I smile and keep the secret. Story 53. I overheard my sister-in-law admit she cheated on my brother through the baby monitor. I was babysitting. The monitor had two-way audio, and I guess she didn't realize it was still on. She was in the kitchen with her best friend, laughing, saying things like, "It only happened twice and he'll never know." I froze. I wanted to turn it off, but I couldn't stop listening. She sounded so casual, like she didn't even feel guilty. My brother adores her. He calls her his soulmate. I never told him. But every time I see them post anniversary photos with sweet captions, I remember what I heard. And I wonder if the baby will grow up with a secret no one talks about. Story 54. My mom has a secret bank account and has been slowly siphoning money from my dad's business for years. She handles the books. Always has. He trusts her completely. One day I needed to print something and accidentally opened the wrong file on her laptop. It was a spreadsheet labeled Exit Plan. It listed wire transfers, hidden investments, even an Airbnb she bought under a fake LLC. She's planning to disappear when my youngest sibling leaves for college. She told me not to say anything. She said, "I've given him 30 years. That's enough." Now I look at family dinners differently. Like watching a movie where you already know the ending. Story 55. My dad has a tattoo of another woman's name. It's not my mom's. I found out in the weirdest way he had back surgery and was shirtless in the hospital. There, just below his shoulder blade, was the name Lena, not a mother, grandmother, or cousin. I asked my aunt. She said Lena was his ex-fiancée, the one he left my mom for, then got back with her weeks before their wedding. Mom has no idea the tattoo exists. He told her he never got ink. Every time we go to the beach or the pool, he wears a shirt. I don't think he regrets it. I think he just learned how to hide it well. Story 56. Every Christmas, my dad pretends to work late so he can spend the evening with his other family. I found out when I borrowed his tablet to check the weather. His calendar was open. It had notes like gifts for Jay and dinner at Carla's. I didn't recognize the names. I did some digging. He has a second partner and 2 stepkids in another city. He's been with her for over 6 years. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. Just said, "It's complicated." So now, every December 24th, we sit around the fireplace and pretend everything's normal, while he's out living his second life. And Mom still believes traffic is just really bad that day. Story 57. My friend paid for her entire college tuition by blackmailing a local politician. She was working at a hotel when a state senator came in with someone who wasn't his wife. They were loud, messy, and left behind evidence. She kept it. Weeks later, she mailed him copies, with a simple note, "Help me afford college." He sent her $60,000 over 2 years. No threats, no lawyers, just quiet wire transfers. She now has a degree in political science. And every time she votes, she laughs. Because she knows the system works. Just not the way it's supposed to. Story 58. My childhood pastor sells adult content online under a different name. I found out completely by accident. I was scrolling Reddit and saw a familiar tattoo on someone's chest. Our pastor has the same one, right over his heart. I clicked. Yup, it was him. He runs a whole secret account. Videos, photos, even custom requests. His face is never in them, but the voice, the tattoo, the background furniture, all match. He preaches about purity, marriage, and temptation every Sunday. But online, he's got thousands of followers and makes more than he does from the church. I haven't told anyone, but every time he talks about sinful behavior, I want to laugh, because I know exactly what he's doing when he's not behind the pulpit. Story 59. A girl from my high school faked cancer for money. She shaved her head, wore scarves, and even posted pictures from hospital bathrooms. Her GoFundMe raised over $18,000. Students hosted a benefit concert. She gave a speech with tears in her eyes. Then one day, someone saw her at the mall. Full head of hair, no scarf, laughing with friends. Turns out her chemo appointments were spa days. The hospital bracelet from her cousin's ER visit. She vanished after graduation, deleted all social media, but I still have screenshots. And every time someone says, "I hope she's doing well," I bite my tongue, because if they knew the truth, they wouldn't be praying for her recovery. They'd be asking for refunds. Story 60. My grandpa kept a locked trunk in his attic. He told us it held old army stuff. After he passed, we opened it. No medals, no uniforms, just photographs, hundreds of them, all of women, some posed, some candid, some clearly unaware they were being photographed. There were notebooks, too. Names, dates, hotel room numbers. Many of the women were married. Some looked scared. No one in our family knew this side of him. He was the funny grandpa, the one who made us pancakes and told dad jokes. But after finding that trunk, we realized he led a very different life before settling down. My mom wanted to burn it all. I've kept one photo, just to remind myself, sometimes people aren't who you think they are, even when they're family. Story 61. When I was 10, I found a girl hiding in our garage freezer. She wasn't dead, just scared. She was maybe 15, shaking, eyes wide. I ran to tell my dad. He went out, looked inside and said, "There's nothing there." He made me promise not to bring it up again. Years later, I asked about it. He said, she needed a place to hide, and I owed someone a favor. That's all he ever told me. I don't know who she was, but I haven't forgotten her face. And I still check every freezer I walk past, just in case someone else is hiding. Story 62. My cousin posted wedding photos with a full bridal party, except one of the bridesmaids wasn't actually invited. She showed up in a dress that matched the others, jumped into the lineup, smiled for every photo. No one questioned it. She blended in so well, even the photographer thought she belonged. Turns out, she was an old friend of the groom. She wasn't invited because she had dated him briefly, and the bride didn't want drama, so she created her own. I didn't say anything, but now there's a framed photo in their hallway with the bride, groom, and one very uninvited guest, front and center. I think about it every time I visit, and it's honestly kind of genius. Story 63. At my old apartment, I found a mirror on the back of the closet door. One day I knocked on it just for fun, and it echoed. I pulled at the edges, popped off. Behind it, a hole. Not a hole in the wall, a tunnel. It led to another apartment, not vacant, lived in. There were photos of me on the walls, printed screenshots of my social media, even a list of what time I left for work each day. I moved out that night. I never told the landlord, and I never looked back. But sometimes when I walk past mirrors, I still knock just to make sure. Story 64. When I was 13, I babysat for a couple down the street. One night, I forgot my charger and went to get it from their bedroom. That's when I saw the photos, framed on the nightstand, of the mom with a completely different man. And they weren't just friends. There were beach trips, candlelit dinners, even an ultrasound photo. I didn't say anything. But the next time I babysat, the dad asked if I'd seen anything weird upstairs. I lied. He smiled too long and said, "Good. Some things are better left that way." They moved a month later. No goodbye. Just gone. Story 65. My piano teacher used to be a getaway driver. She told me one day when I was struggling with a piece. She said, back in the day, I wasn't exactly playing Mozart. I laughed. She didn't. She said she used to drive for small-time criminals in the 80s. Quick pickups, closed mouths. Got out before things got serious. One time, she said, someone didn't come back to the car. She drove off anyway. No questions. She said playing piano helped her forget. Now she teaches kids and plays in church. But when her hands hit the keys, I swear, they don't sound innocent. Story 66. My aunt had twins, but she only raised one. The other was put up for adoption, and no one ever told her son. I found out by accident helping my grandma clean out old photo albums. There were 2 babies in every picture. One always cropped out. When I asked, Grandma sighed and said, "Your aunt wanted a fresh start." One baby was easier. The adopted twin lives 2 towns away. Same eyes, same laugh. They've never met. And my cousin still thinks he was born alone. One day, I'll tell him. I just don't know if it'll break him or make him whole.